This is Jesse Mathewson from Can Mode, and you are listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we are back with a very special Christmas Day episode of The New Scene. And I am not here alone. I have with me Casey Iodine. Casey, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Keith. It's always funny doing this because I talk to you more than anyone else in my life, including my own mother. And I feel like we record... Or no, not record. I think we cover podcast level material on a daily basis at this point.
Almost daily basis. So it's weird to talk to you on the phone and then go into podcast mode and talk to you here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an incredible coincidence that your birth last name is Iodine, right? Because that became the name of the label. I mean, that worked out perfectly.
Yeah, it couldn't have worked out better for us.
Well, look, we're here on Christmas Day to bring you our annual Best Of episode. We're going to each go through our top 10 records of the year. We're going to talk about some of our favorite moments from the year in the New Scene and Iodine recordings. And look, Casey, I think I might be the only podcast who doesn't take a week off and drags myself to the microphone to record a very special episode to be released on Christmas Day. I hope I'm the only one. Am I?
I don't know, but this is the show that keeps on giving. And I don't think there's a better gift we could give to the people than our personal top 10 albums of the year. Exactly.
This year is going to be special too because we have a surprise interview at the end of the episode. It's going to be great. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here is the top records of 2023, according to us. And I'm going to kick things off. So here we go. Number 10, End, The Sin of Human Frailty. Now, End is quickly becoming my favorite band of this new breed of metalcore. The album starts off strong and doesn't let up until the very end. They really get my blood pumping when I listen to them, like big time. Casey, you know that move that people do at hardcore shows where there's the pit and they like do a jump spin kick into the air, like into a wall of people?
Oh yeah.
That listening to the End makes me want to do that really badly. And on this new record, they introduced some industrial elements, and I think it works really well with their overall sound. And the live show is always top tier. I saw them again earlier this year. I forget what episode I detailed it on, but the live show is top tier. The band is top tier. Great stuff. And my favorite track from the record, The Sin of Human Frailty.
The funny thing about End is it's one of my favorite heavy bands, but for whatever reason, this album just never made its way into rotation for me this year. And I don't think I even considered it for my top 10 because I never got a chance to sit down with it. So I'll probably be regretting not including them in my list when I go back and finally hear it.
Yeah, there's someone I know posted a gigantic list of every hardcore record they listened to this year, and it completely dwarfs the amount of stuff I listen to. And there's just a incredible amount of stuff that I didn't even get the chance to listen to out of sheer busyness. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, no, and I think that it's probably worth even mentioning at the front of this because I think that we live in a really amazing time in punk and hardcore because there's just no shortage of new music coming out. And not only is it like the quantity, but I think the bar is so high now for bands to actually be able to carve out a place, an audience and sell enough records to make it worthwhile that people really are pushing the limits of what they can do with their sound. So yeah, I mean, it's a competitive playing field out there, and it's just amazing to see that not only these old bands that we'll be talking about, but just young people coming into the scene for the first time.
Yeah, there's no shortage of good stuff out there. So let's get into some more. Number 9, Incendiary. Change the way you think about pain. This was a big record for a lot of people this year. Incendiary's first new record in 6 years. And now I defy you to listen to the opening track, Bite the Hook. Listen to the entire track. And if you feel nothing after that, then you might just be dead inside. Or you might not like hardcore at all, which is fine. But wow, this album, another one that really gets me going. I just love the band. I love their style. I really love Brendan's vocal style. And I actually met Rob, the guitar player, at a party recently. Chris Enriquez had a thing at a bar in the Lower East Side. And I went over there and was hanging out for a bit. And I met Rob. And I was talking to him for a minute. And I was like, hey, I really love the record. It's in our top records of this year. Really nice guy. Great band. Favorite track? Bite the Hook.
Love this band. And you may or may not see this in my top 10.
Yes. There may be some crossover. So
maybe
strap
just
in.
A few.
All right. Number 8, Rid of Me. Access to the Lonely. Now, I've known Mike, the guitar player of this band, for a long time. He used to be in Fight Amp and another band called Plaque Marks with some of my other friends. And I've known Iteria for an even longer time. And I'm happy to see them together in this band, bringing us this excellent, heavy, melodic, noisy punk rock. It's not too abrasive. It's not too soft. It's the perfect mix of everything. And I had the chance to see them at St. Vitus recently for the Brutal Panda 15th anniversary showcase. They're great live as well. Really great record. Can't say enough nice things about it. They're really coming into their own on this one. And my favorite track, Hell of It. I listened to that one a lot.
Actually, Keith, you had introduced me to Rid of Me. I'd seen their name around, but I never really got around to giving them a listen. And I got to say, after hearing the band and hearing your interview with Iteria, I was just like so impressed with, his story and how open he was with, kind of just sharing his personal experience, just, not only in music, but personally. And I reached out to Iteria on Instagram after I heard the podcast and just said, hey, I was really impressed with, how open you were and the overall interview. And he was really gracious. And, I got some time to listen to this album and just really impressed with what this band is doing.
Yeah, it was good stuff. Another one of those interviews where talking to the person made me like the band even more. So excellent work, Rid of Me. Number 7, Military Gun, Life Under the Gun. Another big record for many, many people this year. And when I saw them at the top of Rockefeller Center this past summer, my friend leans over to me and he's like, okay, are they pop hardcore or hardcore pop? And I laughed and I was like, I don't know, but listen, call it what you want. But I really love what they're doing. The song Very High especially really grabbed me. I listened to that one a ton. And I would put this record in the top 10 based on that song alone. But the entire record is super, super solid. And I think this band has a very bright future ahead of them. And it's a really unique sound. It's I don't want to say emo. I don't want to say post-hardcore. I don't want to say hardcore. It's not too much of any one of those things. It's the perfect blend of everything, and I really love it. And favorite track, Very High, of course.
Yeah, Military Gun, just they're doing something that just like perfectly combines, all the things I love about hardcore and punk. And, it's melodic and it's, it's got enough edge that it has that sort of, what's the spirit of hardcore without being hardcore. And I think they're just top of their game when it comes to that stuff.
Okay, number 6, Taking Meds. Dial M for Meds. It's not emo. It's not exactly post-hardcore, but whatever it is, it's very catchy and very good. It reminds me of the 90s when you would just constantly hear good and interesting music on the radio. It takes me back to that time. It's really catchy. It's really solid. They caught my attention when I saw them live for the first time. They were out with the Casket Lottery. I think they were direct support for the Casket Lottery on their last tour. And I was watching them, and they mentioned that Kurt Ballou recorded their most recent record, Dial M for Meds, at God City. And I was like, okay, I like this band. I got to hear this record. And you know what? It's great. I recommend it to all of you. Go check them out. Favorite track, Life Support. Super, super catchy. You won't get it out of your head once you hear it.
Yeah, I'll be honest. This is a band that sort of fell off my radar. I mean, I saw their name a lot this year, and I think when the album first came out, I saw the album cover and the band being mentioned different places. But this is one I have not listened to yet, so I need to take some time with that one as well. I'll listen to End and back and Taking Meds back to back.
Yeah, I was going to say that'll be another 2024 discovery for you. That happened to me with Soul Blind in 2023. That record came out, their last LP came out in 2022, but I didn't hear it until this year. So that instantly became one of my new favorites. But listen, I digress. We're into top 5 territory here now. So things are going to get very serious very quickly. All right, here we go. Number 5, a surprise release that just came out this month that hammered its way into my top 10. Someone that was on the show last week. Code 7, Go Let It In. A very welcome end-of-year surprise from Code 7. Their first new LP in 19 years. And they bring their own unique brand of post-hardcore to the table. This album has it all. Good riffs, catchy hooks, the great dreamy delay elements, that whole thing. It's got everything. And my favorite track, Laissez-faire. I've been listening to that track over and over. It's been stuck in my head since I first heard this record. And great stuff.
Yeah, I liked Code 7 back in the day. I think I was just about as surprised as everyone else when I saw the surprise comeback album, if you will. But I've been so busy, I have not had a chance to sit down with this one either. And I think all I've heard was whatever track you had on a transition on the podcast. But I'm looking forward to giving this one a few spins here in the coming weeks. I'll have to do like a revised podcast after I actually listen to all the albums that came out this year.
All right, moving on to number 4, Hammock, Love in the Void. Hammock has been my favorite band for like the last 10 years. So I'm always excited when they release something new. And I loved this one in particular because they're doing more full band stuff with vocals on this record. They go back and forth. They'll do full band arrangements with vocals. They'll do full band arrangements instrumental. They'll do straight ambient albums. And I like those too, but I like the full band stuff the most. And they're doing more of that on this. And they're a heavy band. And I don't mean like hardcore metal heavy, but very heavy emotionally. And that's what I love the most about them. I have to be in the right mood and the right headspace to even to listen to them. It's not something I put on every day all the time. It's like a time and place thing. I mean, because like just reading their song titles alone can gut you. So imagine that combined with the music. It's great stuff. Great stuff. And my favorite track from this record, Untruth. Listen to it. It will change your life, Casey.
Okay. I think again, like it's funny. You and I have some overlap clearly, but there's also some divergence. And I think this is another one where Hammock was never really on my radar until I met you, because you had always talked about them being one of your favorite bands. So, once again, this one didn't really kind of fall into my rotation. But I have always liked what I've heard in the past, and definitely look forward to diving into that one as well.
Yes. And I look forward to Hammock eventually coming on the show. So let's go. What are we waiting for?
They'll be listening to this episode.
I know he will. It's going to happen. Number 3, Spotlights, Alchemy for the Dead. Now, I first heard about Spotlights when I had Chris Enriquez on the show way back when. And then the Darling Fire ended up doing a 5-day run of shows with Spotlights over the summer. And when I saw them on this run, this is when I was fully sold on the band. In addition to their massive, massive live sound, they've got great style, they've got great aesthetics. The live show is just absolute top tier. They're super captivating to watch, and it's always a trip to just watch them fully win over any room they play, wherever they play. The beginning of the set, you watch everybody, they're like, oh, what's going on? Who's this? And then by the end of the set, everybody in the room is banging their heads. It's great. And Alchemy is an excellent addition to their roster, and I look forward to more from them in the future as they continue to grow. Definitely go see them live if you have the chance. My favorite track, Algorithmic, and False Gods is a close second, but those songs are back-to-back on the record, so listen to those, and you're in for quite a good time.
I got a confession, Keith.
Yes.
I didn't love this album. And it was really hard for me because I love everyone in that band. But for whatever reason, it just didn't hit me the way I wanted it to hit me. And it did not make it onto my list. And it was kind of hard because I really wanted it to be. And I think it's a great record, but for whatever reason, it just didn't sink, like it didn't hit that spot that I wanted it to hit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of records I listen to throughout the year that I like, but they just don't make it into the continued rotation or something, like top 10 continued rotation, something that I continue listening to for years. There's much respect to be had out there, but hey, it's just a matter of preference.
Yeah.
Do you think Chris is going to be sad when he hears you say that?
He probably. I mean, I love you, Chris, if you're listening. I want to say, I mean, they are immensely talented, and this album deserves all the accolades that it's getting. I think just for me personally, it didn't really strike that chord, which is fine. I mean, it takes different strokes, different folks, right? So I think it's an amazing record, and I think anyone who's a fan of Spotlights will, has been very happy with it. But it did not make it onto my list, unfortunately.
Well, we've got 2 lists here, so all bases are covered. So here we go, top 2. Are you ready for this, Casey?
I'm ready.
Number 2, Zulu, A New Tomorrow. Now, having Anaya on the show and hearing him tell the story of the beginning of this band was pretty compelling stuff. He had very early success in his band, The Bots, that he was in with his brother. And I remember him saying that he wanted to incorporate some of the more hardcore punk sound he was into that band. His brother was not into it. Eventually, he made the tough decision to part ways with the band. He put in time as a drummer for a few notable Bay Area punk bands. And then he started Zulu, the band that he now fronts. And his vision came true. And just hearing him talk about, all these ideas he had for merch and lyrics and samples and the music and everything. And he just pieced it all together and made his vision come true. And now we have A New Tomorrow. And it's not just an LP. I would say it's a work of art because the sampling and the different narration and the way it segues into and out of the songs, this makes this not just a record of songs, but an experience, and one that I highly recommend to everybody. So if you somehow haven't heard it yet, go and check it out. My favorite song, I think it's kind of a tie. All right, Where I'm From, so good, and Life as a Shorty, Shouldn't Be So Rough. Another amazing track. I think I'm tied between those two. It's really hard to pick between them.
Well, I'm not going to comment on Zulu because I have some stuff to say.
I see. Some foreshadowing. I like it. All right. So here we go. The number 1 record, my choice for number 1 record of 2023 is not going to be told to you just yet because in a stunning turn of events, for the first time since Casey and I started doing this top 10 thing, he and I have the same top record of 2023. So we're going to leave everybody on a cliffhanger right now, and I'm going to back up, and now Casey is going to deliver his top 10 records of 2023.
Oh, people are on their seat. They can't wait. They have to suffer through me for like the next 10 minutes to hear what the number 1 record is.
They're hitting that 15 seconds forward button furiously right now. All right, Casey, go for it.
All right, here's what I'm going to start with. The thing that you hate, and I'm going to break the rules right off the bat.
Oh, I know what this is going to be.
Yeah, so look, I got to just say, this year there were so many fucking good records that this top 10 list was just, it took me 2 weeks to boil this down. And I talked to you, like 2 hours ago. And when we were on the phone, I was still messing with the list, trying to figure out like where to place everything. So I'm going to start number 10 with a tie, a two-way tie. First is Military Gun, Life Under the Gun. Such a great record. It's just one of those albums that as soon as you turn it on, it's enjoyable until the very end. And like I had said earlier, I don't think there's anyone out there right now. Well, there's one other band, but they're on my list too, that, just does that really like melodic hardcore punk sound that, just meshes all these different genres together, but to do it in a way that just brings that energy, and that sort of, I don't know, just the construction of the songs everything about him is just fun and enjoyable. And my top track for that was Do It Faster. And it was tied with Rebuilder, Local Support. And Iodine put out the Rebuilder album, so I had a hard time cutting it off this list. But, Rebuilder is one of those bands that normally wouldn't make its way onto my list because they're more of a pop punk sound. And when we took this record on, it just really grew on me, and it is like constantly on rotation for me. And, Sal's been on the show. You've talked to him, just one of the most passionate people in music out there right now. So, it's on there, two-way tie, Military Gun and Rebuilder. My top Rebuilder song, Hanging on the Telephone Part 2.
Yeah, Military Gun, well, we already know what I think about them. Amazing stuff. And Rebuilder, when I listened to the record in anticipation of Sal being on the show, I really liked it. Even though it's not my go-to style of music, I really liked it. And talking to Sal, it just made me really like the band even more. He was just so personable, and he's so passionate about this band. And after hearing about everything he went through, even before the whole debacle with the Anti-Flag label, to get this record out, I was just so happy for him that it happened. And great stuff.
Yeah, and they worked on it for like 2 years. It was no small feat. So, but that's my only two-way tie, I swear. Everything else is playing by the rules, Keith.
All right, we will allow it because, Casey, I know you are in a tough position being the head of the label, so it's okay.
All right. Okay, number 9. I had Paint It Black, Famine. I gotta say, I think I went into this album thinking I wasn't gonna like it. With Paint It Black, having not done a record in what was it, 10 years? It's been a while.
The last release was the Invisible EP in 2013, 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years. So, I think the bar is pretty high, and I've always been a huge fan of Dan Yemen's bands. Lifetime is one of my top bands of all time. Kid Dynamite's one of my favorite bands of all time. So, when anyone that sort of like holds that position for me does a new record, I'm going to kind of hold it to a higher standard than I would a new band, and look, they didn't disappoint. I mean, this album it's what I wanted from Dan Yemen and the rest of the band. So it was catchy. It was hard. I like the way they mixed it. It was pretty dirty. Did you get that feel when you listened to it?
Yeah. It sounds like, it has like more of a classic hardcore punk feel. Now, it doesn't sound like some old record from the 80s or whatever, but just, the musicality mixed with the production, it just works so good.
Yeah. The choruses were hooky. It hit hard. I mean, like I said, kudos to those guys for coming out with just such a strong record after such a long break. Number 8, I had Gel, Only Constant. This is a band that I think there was. Do you know when this record came out? So I'm interrupting myself, but did it come out early in 2023?
Hold on, let's check the records. It came out March 31st, 2023.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping, because I kept seeing this album pop up and pop up and pop up. And I think that, I spend so much time around music that I often sort of ignore whatever's hype at the moment. And I just kind of come to it in my own time. And the thing that sold me on Gel was seeing them live at Fest. And I got to see them twice. They played the main stage, and then they played this like after midnight backyard show out in the suburbs. It was the weirdest thing ever. It was like some guy's backyard, and Jeromes Dream played, and Gel played, and there was probably 300 people just like crowded around this like pit in Southern Florida, and they just brought it. And after that, I went back and I listened to the album, and it's just everything you want from like a crusty punk, hardcore album. And it reminded me of that band Nausea from the 80s and 90s. Do you remember them?
No.
Oh, it just really crusty, heavy punk. And it's simple, but I don't know. They just, they made something that was really cool. And it's been on rotation now for the last 2 months.
Yeah, it's really good. I was just listening to the record earlier today. Excellent stuff. Incredible bass tone too. That was the first thing that jumped out at me.
Huge. My pick off that track or off that album was Attainable. But it's worth mentioning too that this is the last few years. It's really been mind blowing how many women have entered, sort of the hardcore realm as far as, either fronting bands or playing in bands. And, I think that it really is amazing because, I'm going to date ourselves here, but, back in the 90s, like I only remember like 2 bands that had women that played in them. One was like 108 with Kate. The other was Disembodied. And was there Most Precious Blood, right? That was another one.
Yeah, and the only 2 I can remember, well, Disembodied, Walls of Jericho, and Fast Times.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a handful of hardcore bands. And it's just so fucking cool now that women are sort of coming in and just dominating in the scene right now. And I just love to see it. So congrats to Gel, because they deserve all the success they get.
Absolutely.
Number 7 for me, Fiddlehead. Death is Nothing to Us. And I will say that this album was a little bit disappointing to me. It still made its way on my list, but the last Fiddlehead record is still one of my favorite records. And it came out in 2020, 2021.
Yeah, 2021, I think. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it was it was my album of the year. And I think that it was going to be hard for them to top the last record because it was almost perfection. So Fiddlehead, one of my favorite bands, similar to Military Gun, they are just the top of the heap when it comes to melodic hardcore and punk. And, this album was enjoyable from start to finish. I just didn't feel that it had as many sort of, high moments that their past albums have had. But the track that I want to highlight is Sullen Boy, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah, this was a really good record. It brings me back to classic hardcore, post-hardcore emo bands, like 90s stuff, but it doesn't sound like that really. Like when it's hard to explain, but when I listen to Fiddlehead, I get the same feeling I get when I listen to Turning Point when they became more post-hardcore, right? But Fiddlehead sounds like their own thing. They've really come into their own. And just looking at the album cover, I was looking at the album cover today, and I just got this weird feeling of nostalgia looking at it. I can't explain it, but just, I don't know. I just really liked it. And I saw them live for the first time at Furnace Fest. I think that was last year when you and I were both there. And just an overall great band.
And Pat Flynn is hands down one of the best front people of any hardcore band out there right now.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Although he would be closely competing with my number 6 pick, which is Drain, Living Proof. And Drain was not initially on my list. Although when I went back and looked at all the albums that came out this year, I was like, this album just hits and slaps so hard that it's got to come on the list. And I tell you, when you interviewed Sammy, I was sold on Drain. I was like, I'm going to buy into the hype. These guys just like, they are living it. And this album it's fun. It's heavy. They throw in all these like crazy metal riffs and solos and it's just such a cool album. And, seeing them live and seeing the energy they bring, again, it's just so fun to see bands like this out there right now. My favorite track off this one was Evil Finds Light.
Yeah, I hope I get to see them sometime soon. And talking to Sammy just instantly sold me on the band. He's one of the nicest and most charismatic people I've ever spoken to on the show. And he got me all hyped up even before we started recording, which no one has done before. He's like, all right, man, we're going to do this, right? We're going to have fun. It's going to be awesome. And I was like, hell yeah. And I love the record. I love the band. And I wish them continued success.
Yeah, I got to figure out his secret to life, man, because that dude just seems to be living it. And he was just so happy and so high on life. Like, I'm missing something. He needs to write a book.
I think the secret is to live in California and not be in the Northeast.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Number 5, I think, is sort of a polar opposite in a way. I had Horsewhip, Consume and Burn, and another album that came out on Iodine. But I will say that this album would have been on my list regardless. It's so heavy, it's so dark, and it is just. I think the whole thing clocks in at like 22 minutes or something like that. And it is just a brutal assault on all the senses. Horsewhip, I think that, this is their 3rd album. And I feel like this is really their pinnacle. They finally found their sound. They had a few lineup changes. They switched vocalists, and everything about this album from start to finish, it's just an assault. And Plague Machine was my top song, and it just has everything you want from that D-beat, brutal hardcore crust punk sound. Bands like His Hero Is Gone or Tragedy, and there's not many bands that are doing it as well as they're doing it right now.
Yeah, it's fast, it's heavy, it's unrelenting. I'm a big fan of this type of hardcore. I thought of Dead Guy and All Else Failed and Easy Prey because of that, shouty kind of Tim Singer style vocals. I really like that kind of stuff. And this was my 2nd favorite heavy Iodine record of the year. So can't say enough good things about it. So if it was my 2nd favorite, what could be the first? Well, more will be revealed.
Number 4, I had Incendiary, Change the Way You Think About Pain.
Yes.
This is another band that I largely was not paying attention to until they came on the podcast. And I went back and gave this album a few spins, and holy shit, this has got to be one of the heaviest albums that came out this year. And again, it's like this type of hardcore is not usually the type of stuff I gravitate towards. Like I usually gravitate towards more stuff like End or Horsewhip or stuff in that realm, or more the melodic side. But I just couldn't deny just how hard this album hit. And I don't know who produced it, but holy shit. It is heavy in a way that every heavy band dreams they could sound like. And just like you, Bite the Hook, I don't know what it is about that breakdown of that song, but it makes me want to just start punching people.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. And, I'm glad you mentioned the production, because the production on this record, I got to figure out where they recorded this thing and go there myself. So good.
Yeah. Number 3, the Iron Roses self-titled album. I just think that this was another album that really broke ground. It combined a lot of different styles and genres, and it's super melodic. But when you listen to the lyrics, it's pretty dark and heavy. It gets political, it gets personal. And, even if you're not into this type of punk, and I'm hesitant to use the word ska punk because I don't really think that that's what it is. I think it's more just sort of a melting pot of a lot of different influences and genres. But it's got that earworm secret sauce to it where no matter what you do, you can't get these songs out of your head. When we signed the Iron Roses last year, the members, Nathan Gray and Becky, they were like, "Are you ready for this? Because I don't think it's going to be the way you expect." And at first I was like a little bit scared and trepidatious that I didn't know what I was getting, but man, this album just really blew me away when I heard it for the first time.
I've been talking to Nathan for a number of years on this show, and I'm really rooting for them. The last time they were on was one of the best conversations I ever had with them, and certainly one of the best I had all year. And I remember them saying that they were going to be giving their all to this band for the next 2 years. And Nathan and the rest of the band are really putting in the work. The record is great, and I'm wishing them all the best.
Yeah. Oh, and my track for that album is Revolution Summer. Number 2, I actually just moved some stuff around before I did my list because I couldn't decide for my number 2. And you and I matched again. Zulu, A New Tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah, I just can't deny. I was listening to this album about an hour ago before we started the podcast, and it's just such a special album. And what they did with everything from the songs to the transitions to, all the stuff that you said, it just, I don't know, like it gives me chills at times when I listen to it. And they sampled some old, is it like Motown or like old, you know what I'm talking about? Like some of the old song samples they have in between the tracks.
Yeah, like old song samples. I think some narration that might be from other records. I think some original narration. There's a lot of stuff in here.
Yeah, the whole album is just like an experience in of itself. And anyone who's like been a casual Zulu fan, I challenge you to go sit down and listen to this album from start to finish, with no distractions, because like you said, it is a piece of art. It's a special record. It's got a really important message. And, Anaya has an amazing story. And I think what they are doing is just, kind of revolutionary to really take this approach for a hardcore band and, put forth the message that they're putting forth. And to do it at such a young age is so impressive. I don't know how old he is, but I think he's in his 20s. Is that?
Oh, yeah. I think mid-20s. So yeah, definitely really impressive.
Yeah. They made a record that people in their 40s and 50s dream that they could make.
Yeah.
So, yeah, huge congrats to them.
Yeah. I got chills a lot of times listening to it, too, because I love when there's like some hip hop flair on some of the songs, too. Like, especially, again, in the song Where I'm From, just the way they do the vocals, the verse, I got like serious chills listening to it again today. And I was like, yes, this is so good.
Yeah, Where I'm From, 100% my top track as well.
Yeah. All right. So here we are at the precipice of everything. Now, Casey actually, I saw his list ahead of time, but he switched it again before we did this. So there's some big surprises here. But we did have the number 1 record. Now, we did not get together. We did not plan this. This is pure coincidence that we each have this number 1 record as our number 1 record. But this record has had a huge impact on me this year. So I'm going to tell you what it is right now. My choice for top record of 2023, Jeromes Dream, The Gray In Between. Now, I first caught wind of the album as singles started dropping, and I heard all of the singles, and I liked all of the singles, but it wasn't until the album came out and I heard Pines on the Hill with guests for the first time that I got fully hooked. And I remember hearing it, and I immediately sent it to Tommy, and I was like, you've got to hear this. That riff is just so haunting, and I've never really heard anything like that from Jeromes Dream before, So it just grabbed me, and slowly I just started listening to the record over and over, and it became my most listened to record of the entire year. And in addition to being my favorite record of the year, it's just been really inspirational to me too, because I'm starting a new band. It's kind of in this neighborhood of music. So just the production and the guitar tone, not only my favorite songs of the year, my favorite record of the year, but just like inspirational too for what I'm starting to create. So I love that about it as well. So in addition to best record of the year, they also put on the best live show I saw this year. I expected the show to be mostly older dudes, right? Because a lot of these shows can be. But I went to the sold out gig in Brooklyn, and I was really pleasantly surprised to see a ton of young people there just going off for the entire set. And they sound massive on record. They sound massive live. There's not enough good things I can say about Jerome's Dream. So that's my choice for number one record of the year, The Gray In Between. And my favorite track, easily, A-A-E-E-A-A. I cannot get enough of that riff. I listen to the song a lot, and when I see them live again, I might lose control when they play that song and just go off. We're gonna have to wait and see what happens.
Well, Keith, my number one album of the year of 2023 is Jerome's Dream, The Gray In Between.
Yes.
Can you believe it?
I'm stunned.
All I can say about this album is it is such a special record. And it's, for me personally, knowing Erik and Jeff and Sean personally, and, they are close friends, they're a big part of my life, and knowing the process that they went through to make this album, they went to some very dark places. And I know that their process for writing the songs is just so different than any other band that I've ever worked with or know personally. And I didn't hear any of the demos. I didn't hear any of the sort of the workup until they had the final album complete. And I remember Erik had sent me the album, and he was like, please listen to it from start to finish, when you have some time to really sit down with it. And Keith, I think you probably know some of this. And anyone who knows me personally knows that I had a really tough few years. I had gone through some pretty tough personal things, and I don't talk about it publicly much, but it was a rough time the last couple of years for me. And
Yes,
I heard this album, and for whatever reason, it just struck a chord, and it had all these feelings just sort of pour out of me. And there's a moment on the album where Jeff starts screaming, "I've got to get away. I've got to get away. I've got to get away."
When you just started saying that right now, I got chills down my spine.
Yeah. Well, I am not ashamed to admit this, but I was listening to this album in my car, and when Jeff was screaming that part and hearing it for the first time, I just started bawling my eyes out, and I felt like I was weeping like a small child. I don't know what it was, but it just brought out this like raw emotional feeling inside of me. And they just created something that was just so beautiful. And it's heavy, it's brutal. They incorporate feedback and noise in ways that I don't think I've ever heard bands use before.
Right.
Like the feedback is part of the song,
Yeah.
or the songs. And their style and the way they create the songs from start to finish is, they build the songs around the rhythm section, which I also don't think a lot of bands do. Like Erik will kind of write a drum part, bring it to the practice space, and they sort of build a song around the drum part, which I just think is incredible. So anyway, yeah, I mean, everything from the heaviness to the interlude tracks with the pianos and some of the softer parts, it's just a perfect album from start to finish. I am extremely proud that we got to put this album out on Iodine. but it doesn't matter that we put it out, because if it wasn't, it would still be my top album of the year.
So there you have it. That is our top 10 records, but we want to take some time right now for some honorable mentions. So I'm going to kick it off with, now this is a 2022 record, but a song from this record got stuck in my head so much I have to mention it. The band is Ways Away. The LP is called Torch Songs. It's from last year. This is the band featuring Jesse from Stick to Your Guns and Sergi from Sam I Am and a bunch of other bands, and there's other notable people in the band. But this is a great band, and this is a great record, and the song I'm Not Laughing With You, it just got stuck in my head so many times over the course of this year. I didn't hear the record until this year. You got to check it out. That song in particular, but the whole record is great as well.
Yeah, and Keith, I mean, speaking of Sam I Am, just to kick off the honorable mentions, Sam I Am had a new album out in 2023 called Stowaway. And, you know, this was an amazing album. And, you know, they I don't remember when their last album was, but it's been a while. Really enjoyable, well put together. You know, this was a tough one to not make it onto my final list, but I think that I'm just like so stuck in like what Sam I Am has done in the past that, you know, this one didn't quite nudge its way on the top 10, but this one was definitely in rotation this year.
Yes, classic band, classic stuff. Another one for me, One Step Closer, Songs for the Willow. This is a 3-song EP that they put out this year. Some of the best songs they've ever released. I'm hoping a look into what they're planning for the future. I know they have recorded a new record, which I'm really looking forward to. This is a band that I've been following since their debut EP. I love everything that they do, and these 3 songs are must listens.
I just got to say, like, it is a new era for hardcore. And the amount of bands that are popping off right now, the amount of new record labels, it's overwhelming, but at the same time, it's just really exciting. And I sense that same level of excitement in young people that I felt when I first got into hardcore, you know, way back when. And I mean, just, you know, with One Step Closer, and then, you know, this year we had new releases from Scowl, from FOM, Calling Hours. I mean, just so much really cool stuff coming out. And then we have labels like Flat Spot and Convulse and New Morality Zine and Sunday Drive Records. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's just like a really cool time in music. And so many of these records are just so well made, and it makes it hard to come up with a top 10, but you know, it's just impressive with the amount of output that's out there right now.
Oh yeah. Like you said, it feels like when I got into hardcore, everything is very exciting. There's a lot of new people coming in. There's a lot of new excellent bands out there. Speaking of, here's another new excellent band that I really dig. The Callous Dow Boys. They released a 3-song EP this year called God Smiles Upon the Callous Dow Boys. They have a really unique blend of metalcore. They're experimenting with a lot more different sounds on this EP. The way they blend everything is just really unique. I mean, you could say they sound like Dillinger Escape Plan or this band or that band, but I would not hold them to any single comparison of any band. I think what they're doing is really special, and I loved this EP.
Yeah, that band is just absolutely wild. And like, yeah, it's really cool to see how much traction they're getting right now.
Yeah.
Some other things I had on my list, you know, I actually don't buy much vinyl. I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that. But one of the records I did buy this year was the new Values Here, or the debut album from Values Here, which is called Take Your Time, I'll Be Waiting. And yeah, just a super fun band, you know, old school, classic hardcore stuff. And just was kind of really excited with this record, even though, you know, it's not something that I would typically pick up as far as a physical record goes. The other album that dropped this year that I think really surprised people was the new Hope Conspiracy EP that dropped on Black Friday, which was called Confusion, Chaos, Misery. Nobody was expecting that. And that is just some super hard-hitting classic Hope Conspiracy stuff.
All right, so a couple more here. Here we go. Soft Kill, Meta World Peace. This band is always doing something interesting. This is another great LP from them. They put out music at a pretty fast pace. And, usually that would worry me with a band, but I love everything that Soft Kill has done. This album is no exception. They even experiment with some hip-hop woven into the songs on this record. Great live and great on record. Another one, Calling Hours.
Yeah, Calling Hours was on my mention list as well.
The album is called Say Less. I love it. It's just great having Popeye in a full band situation again. I just got really good feelings listening to this. It's super catchy. It's super melodic. It's everything you would want from Popeye and the rest of the guys. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, after that podcast interview, that one single from the album, I had that on repeat for like 3 days straight. I just couldn't get it out of my head. It was like an earworm. But, really excited to see Popeye playing again with a full band. Great debut EP. Can't wait to see what they've got coming next. I wanted to give a shout out to the new Mutoid Man, our boy Stephen Brodsky. Great album. They're doing solid work. And also With Honor from New Jersey, they dropped a new record on Pure Noise, a record called Boundless. Just really good, straightforward, hardcore stuff. I think what they did was really awesome. And also Loma Prieta, Last. This one was a tough one. I had this one on my short list for, days leading up to selecting my final 10. Really beautiful record. Always loved that band. If I had to list it, it would probably come in at number 11 right now. Like, it was one of the more anticipated records of 2023 for me.
Yeah, same here. I loved it, and it was a struggle to get it down to 10. I really loved Last. It was great. Sean is just magnificent guitar player. I love his tone. I love everything he does. So congrats on that record. And I've got one more here, which is not a scene type band. Now, when I studied for that really hard certification I got back in 2020, I would put on the lo-fi hip hop beats channel to have something on in the background when I study. And that music is kind of like post-rock in that a lot of it sounds the same, right? But the longer you listen to it, you can start to pick out certain artists. And then there's certain people who really stand out. So Laffy is the artist. Out of Orbit is Laffy's latest record. It came out in 2023. Whenever I'm listening to that lo-fi hip-hop beats station, I can always tell when a Laffy song comes on. This record is fantastic, and I recommend it.
All right, Keith, I have a confession.
Yes.
Although it's not that surprising because anyone who knows me knows that I love pop music. Huge Taylor Swift fan. I like Lady Gaga. I like Dua Lipa. This year, Olivia Rodrigo's new album, Guts, so freaking good. It's like, it's catchy, it's poppy, and it's everything you want in a pop record. I had this on a lot this year. So I'm probably discrediting myself now, and everyone's not going to listen to our music anymore. But hey, you got to give her respect. She made an amazing album.
So there you go. The number one record of the year, Jerome's Dream, The Gray In Between. And we're going to have an exclusive interview with Erik Ratensperger of Jerome's Dream coming up shortly. But first, we're going to talk about our favorite subject, ourselves, because it's been an incredible year for Iodine Recordings, and it's been an incredible year for the new scene. So, Casey, what do you think was the most listened to episode of the new scene in 2023?
This isn't fair because I know the answer. I think I know the answer.
Yeah.
Kurt Ballou, Converge.
Yeah. It like by a long shot. He just blew everybody else out of the water historically and this year.
I got to say, like, people who know me, I used to work for Kurt and Converge. I used to tour with them. And, Kurt doesn't do a ton of interviews. So, one, I think it was really cool that he came on the show, but he came on and he just brought everything you'd want to the interview, to the table, and, he talked about the early Converge days. He talked about his recording style. He talked about his songwriting process, and he got really personal at times. And, it was just such a a cool thing to hear. And even though I know Kurt, I've known him for 20 something years. I heard stories on that I had never even heard before. So it's no wonder that, people keep coming back to that episode.
Yeah, it still does very good numbers. It always creeps back into the top 10s, and definitely one of my favorites of the year. Kurt was super nice. I think I could have kept going. It was a long interview too. I think we might have recorded more than an hour and a half, and I could have kept going. And he never said like, we got to wrap this up or I got to go. It just couldn't have gone better. So great stuff. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about?
Well, let's talk about some of the highlights, because I think that 2023 for this podcast, we've seen a lot of growth, over the years. And I think we've, doubled our numbers from the year prior as far as number of people listening.
Yep.
But I mean, God, Stephen Brodsky, Norman Brannon, Tool, right? Justin Chancellor from Tool.
Yeah.
I mean, how does it feel to be talking to, some of the most important people in the scene right now, or in music in general? Because, it's impressive that you're able to get all these people on the show, but that you do it with such comfort and ease.
It's a dream come true, but I don't get too wrapped up in it because I'm so close to it and I'm always working on it. I'm just focused on the work and getting the next episode done and doing the best job that I can with every single interview. But once in a while, I'll like scroll through the timeline and be like, wow, look at all these people I've talked to. It's pretty crazy. But sometimes it takes someone telling me, like Casey, when we were at the Quicksand show, right? And we were watching them and you were like, you've interviewed 3 out of the 4 people on that stage, because Brodsky was up there, Walter was up there, and Sergio was up there. And I was like, oh yeah, that's really weird. So I love it.
What were your highlights for this year? I mean, I was just looking back, and we got Dennis Lixon.
Hold on, let's pull up a list here. It's going to be hard. I can't remember like anything. Like some things I remember and some things I don't. I have a return guest coming up, and I went back and listened to their old episode, and I didn't remember like any of it. So it's like, all right, let's see. I'm going to go back to the beginning of this year. We started off strong with, Tim Singer. I was really nervous during that one because it's Tim Singer. That was great. Jake Snyder, amazing. Annihilate of Zulu, amazing. Sergi from Sam I Am and Ways Away. He really brought it.
My favorite moment on the Sergi interview was when he like sort of talked down on himself. He's like, I'm not talented like, a singer. I just play guitar.
Oh yeah. He had this whole talking track where he's like, no one has a favorite guitar player. Like, I'm just playing guitar to the singer or something like that. And I was like, no, like I have favorite guitar players, but he just wouldn't let it. He wouldn't accept it. And I said he wasn't giving himself enough credit, but I don't think he agreed.
I thought the Dennis Lixon interview was incredible. Dennis brought some really amazing stories. Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing him talk about sort of the rise, and I don't know if I'd say the fall of Refused, but sort of, the process of how the band ended. And, it's cool to hear that, because I don't know that I ever heard that story, at least in that complete way before.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites. Stephen Brodsky. We had Adam McGrath on the show. All right. We started reaching out to Cave In, I think the first year we started doing this podcast, right? So I was super, super happy to have Adam on the show. And then I just didn't think we'd ever get Stephen Brodsky. I don't know why. I can think negatively about things sometimes. It's a thing. But he came on the show, and in addition to it being a great conversation, Casey, you know this, I'm very critical of myself when it comes to the interviews. But I feel like the Stephen Brodsky interview was perfect. And, what you hear is always like really good because I spend a lot of time editing everything and making sure it's perfect. But that conversation just flowed. I didn't feel like I was awkward at all. And I think everything was just perfect. So it was nice to feel like that on top of it being an incredible conversation.
Yeah, no, that was a great one. And I think my personal favorite this year was Norman Brannon. And yeah, I've heard interviews with Norman before, but I just felt like he told some very personal, very sincere stories, just about his struggles as coming out as homosexual and dealing with his family, and how music and his zine really sort of helped him process that. And I was really gripped by that episode, and I probably listened to it 3 or 4 times since it came
Really?
out. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had to keep going back because every time I heard it, I heard something that I didn't hear the first time through. That one I thought was really special.
Yeah, another person that I was just waiting and waiting to have on the show, and he's been such a big inspiration to me. Texas Is the Reason has been one of my favorite bands since like the year 2000. I pretty much learned to play guitar like listening to them, and just a huge inspiration, Norman and the rest of that band. So very happy to talk to him. And Justin Chancellor from Tool. That's one of my favorites because that was just such a surprise. I really didn't think I would ever have anyone that big on the show, like a big mainstream band like that.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing you booked Dave Grohl for the last episode of the year, because it doesn't get any bigger than that, right?
We got to keep bringing the heat. We have to. And then Popeye Vogelsang from Far Side and Calling Hours. We've gotten a big response to that episode. That's definitely one of my favorites of the year.
I think my favorite part of the Popeye episode was when he stopped and he's like, "So Keith, tell me how you're feeling," or something like that. He like turned it around on you, and I could tell you were so caught off guard. You're like, "Oh wait, how do I answer this?"
I was incredibly caught off guard. And then like when he said we were friends, I felt bad because I kind of joked. I was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna email about shows," but like that was just so meaningful. And I'm happy that he said that, and I hope he knows I consider him a friend too. That was really touching. Definitely one of my favorites of the year. And I'm going to throw Jeff from Code 7 in there too, because that whole detour with all the ghost stories and everything, super unexpected and super interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. And definitely an enjoyable episode. And for those of you who have not gotten to that episode yet, that detour is definitely an interesting listen.
Yeah. Ghosts are real, apparently. Who knew? All right, let's do this. How about some thanks? First, I want to thank everyone who came on the show this year, right? They all make it possible. I love every episode of this show. I put my all into every episode of this show, and anybody who's willing to come on and give me their time, I'm just super appreciative of. I have to thank Casey for supporting the podcast and helping me get guests and helping me have wonderful art for the show that I call him at 2 a.m. every night to request. And no,
I don't
I'm making
think the
up.
people know that. Do they know that? I do all the graphics. So, I'm late on Sunday nights. I'm up till 2 a.m. trying to get graphics to Keith for the next episode.
Yeah, I don't think they know that. Yeah, so Casey and I have this thing now on Sundays. Like he'll call me while he's doing the graphics, and then we'll just be on the phone. Like sometimes we won't even be saying anything. Like we'll just have the phones up, and he's doing something, and I'm doing something, and it's teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work.
In talking about the graphics, I think it's important to thank all of the photographers that have provided their photos. And this is another sort of behind the scenes sort of thing that we don't talk about very often, but every photo that we use, we source direct from photographers. We ask their permission to use the photos. We credit them appropriately, and we don't ever use photos without permission. And so everyone who's given us photos has done so out of goodwill and, wanting to help the show. So there's some that we keep coming back to, like JC and Michelle and who else, Keith? I feel like we use like the same 10 people over and over again.
Danielle
Dombrowski. Yep.
Corey Lane.
Yep.
I can't think of everybody. Damn. There's too many.
There's too many for sure.
Yeah.
And then Simon who made the original graphics, still supports us. So thank you, Simon.
And all the great publicists we're working with, Monica from Speakeasy, Amy from Atom Splitter, Shane from Atom Splitter, Stephanie Marlowe. I mean, who else? Tim from Sweet Cheetah.
We've got to shout out Alexa from Wordless PR, because I'm pretty sure we've had every musician she's represented on the show. She came out to the Quicksand book signing, and we were joking about how we just run down her list of artists, and
we just have everyone she represents on the show.
Yeah.
The entire list. And of course, all the listeners who support us week to week. You know who you are. I speak with a lot of you. You know, we have a solid group of people who listen to every episode, no matter who's on. And that's the biggest compliment of all to me, you know, because it's like a story that's unfolding that we're all in together. So, yeah, thank you to everybody who's had any hand at all in helping make this show a success.
Oh, let's not forget about the sponsors, Keith.
Oh, the sponsors. Yes, the sponsors. Okay. All right, here we go. Are you ready? So we're going to thank Death Wish Inc., New Morality Zine, Triumph Printing Company, Evil Greed, and Bridge 9 Records. And speaking of Bridge 9 Records, they are our sponsor for the month of December. So here's some updates. War on Women will be headlining We Out Here Festival, a festival that celebrates feminine voices in underground rock. That takes place February 23rd in St. Pete, Florida. Check the Bridge 9 page for more info. Incendiary Device have announced select tour dates that run through May. Check their page or the Bridge 9 page for a full list of dates. Sign up for Bridge 9's email list. You'll get information about new releases, exclusive in-store shows and events, and promotions that go out to the email subscribers regularly. And don't forget, this is big news. You get 20% off in the Bridge 9 store with code NEWSCENEPOD at checkout. 20% off. It's the holiday season. Buy yourself something nice. Buy something nice for somebody else. Use that code at checkout and get 20% off your total order. And don't forget to stop by the Bridge 9 record store at 282 Rantoul Street in Beverly, Massachusetts. For more information, head to bridge9.com, and don't forget to follow the label on Instagram at Bridge9. That's Bridge, N-I-N-E. All right, so there you go. And now we have an exclusive interview with Erik Ratensperger of Jeromes Dream. Enjoy. All right, so we are here now with the New Scene Top Album of the Year recipient, Erik Ratensperger. Erik, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much. It's really nice to be here.
Yes, Erik, it's great to have you here. It's been a while since I've spoken to you. And listen, first I've got to say, The Gray in Between, amazing record. My favorite of the year, Casey's favorite of the year. And you have won the coveted New Scene Top Record of the Year award. I'm going to ask you some questions about the record and some other stuff. But you know what? First, I have to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a blur of a year, but we're at the end of it, and we've made it successfully to the end, and a lot of reflecting going on. Yeah, just a wild ride, man. I mean, I can't believe that we're already here, and yeah, it's just been a crazy year, and I'm super grateful for all the things that kind of went down, and yeah, what a great way to close it out with you two.
Yeah, this is great. I think this might be the fastest year of my entire life. But before we launch into talking about the record, Casey, since you're here, do you want to share with Erik any quarterly earnings reports or sales figures or any strategies for the upcoming year?
Yeah, we'll go through all the recoupables first, and then the checks in the mail, Erik. I promise.
Okay.
I think it would be interesting to talk about all of that stuff publicly on the air. It could be a good look into the music business. What do you guys think?
Yeah, the transparency of financials. Yeah, that's a very intriguing subject matter. We might as well show our personal bank accounts as well.
I think we can all agree that no one gets into punk and hardcore to get rich, and we all do this from a place of passion. And that's one of the things that Jeromes Dream and me and Iodine always sort of like connected on, was that this is something that we do from the heart, and it's expensive and it costs a lot of money, but at the end of the day, like, being able to create this as a team has just been a really special process.
It really,
I like that.
yeah. I mean, and it's true. I mean, in all seriousness, that's very much the case. And it's almost like welcomed suffering in the process, but enjoying every second of it while we're doing it. And it definitely was a concerted effort to kind of poise this thing to do what it did. And what I really appreciated was how we all kind of fired on all cylinders and brought our A game to the table, and really worked in concert with each other. There was like a real synchronicity to how we just were adaptable and nimble and just fired up from day one. And that really was kind of, I mean, I feel like there's still a continuation from now going into next year. There's just like this amazing feeling of camaraderie and effort to just keep forging ahead. So, yeah, I'm obviously super grateful for that. Super grateful for Casey and his dedication and his passion. And, I've never experienced anything like this. I think I could speak for Jeff and Sean regarding that as well.
When did you start writing the record, The Gray In Between? Was it after you moved out to San Francisco?
Yeah, so when I moved to San Francisco in July 2020, and because Jeff was already here, Jeff had moved here 20 years ago, so he's been, he was already settled in, and Sean grew up here. And when I moved up here, it was those two guys that made my transition from Los Angeles to SF basically seamless. And the only difficulty was that it was during a pandemic. And to fast forward through all that stuff, it's like basically once we felt safe to get back in a room, we just started going to the rehearsal space and didn't really have an objective at first. We just wanted to have something to look forward to every week. And we would just get in the space and not really have an objective other than to just play music and hang out together. And it sort of organically developed into this rhythm of exploring new music, new territory. And we just kind of found this momentum. And before we knew it, we had a cluster of songs. We were doing a lot of like iPhone memos and demos, and I was recording a lot of stuff on guitar at home, bringing it to them. And then we just kind of like jumped on ideas and expanded on them. And, after a night or two, we had these frameworks of songs, and there just felt like there was like a real thing kind of happening. So then we kept going into the space every week, and then once a week ended up becoming two times a week. And it was just like it was just the best time every week just to be in that room. And I feel like it just gave us some kind of direction, some kind of purpose. There was a lot of unknowns back then. So we kind of just holed up, and we were just together in this bubble. It was really just Sean and Jeff and Jack Shirley. On occasion, we would get like food with him, but like sit at opposite corners of the apartment. It was such a weird time, but we made our best effort to at least feel somewhat normal week to week. But the routine and the scheduling of practice really kind of gave us that constant,
Erik, I've got a question, if you don't mind,
yeah.
Keith. I think before you jumped on, Keith and I were talking about just some of the unique things that this album brought to the table that I don't know that I've ever heard before. And one of them is sort of the way that it feels like these songs revolve around the percussive elements, right? Where there's this sort of groove and rhythm, and the drums almost come across as the centerpiece. And the other thing was the way that you kind of interwoven the noise and the feedback. And I'm curious as to the approach of how those two things really came into the songwriting.
Well, I don't know if it was conscious choice to have everything kind of threaded together the way it became threaded. I think the way Sean plays and how that interacts with, sort of the rhythmic nature of Jeff and I playing. It's almost like, Jeff and I serve as like one instrument in certain ways, just because we're so locked in, and those rooted parts of the songs are so percussive. And we've kind of always, I think, again, unintentionally, but because I'm a drummer, but I typically put together the frameworks for these songs. I feel like that's just how I write. That's how my mind works. And somehow it really it resonates with Jeff, and Jeff like really understands the approach I'm taking to the songs, and he adapts very quickly to them. And Sean, again, just he naturally just kind of slid right in with his own take on the songwriting and really made the parts his own. And I have no idea what exactly he's doing, but his style just it really comes through in these songs where you can almost really tell that Sean is playing these parts, and he really made them his own. So I wouldn't say that it was like a stylistic choice. It never really was. It was almost just kind of how we've always approached it. And I think maybe the difference between this record and stuff that we've done previously is, I think we were really one thing that we were really intentional about and really mindful of was the actual songwriting. We really wanted to kind of raise the bar for ourselves, not only in like the musicianship or the execution of the musicianship, but really like challenging ourselves in how we can construct songs that were interesting, but still, I don't know if listenable is the word, but they were written in such a way where we hoped that like, people could latch on to some kind of part within every song. So yeah, I don't think like we're such, I don't know if we're like that versed in songwriting to really know what we were doing at all times. I think there was a lot of stuff that just kind of, happened organically. And I think we definitely can tell what's working and what's not working, but that doesn't come without playing something, dozens of times over and over again, just to kind of flesh it out and determine like what you can take away from it to make it feel bigger or more impactful,
Mm-hmm. I think that really comes across because there's certainly at least one memorable part in every song, and definitely more in a lot of them. And that's something I tried to do myself, like not make it too complicated, have something memorable, have something repeating, have some good structure in there, because too many bands just throw a lot of parts together, or it's like not cohesive, it's not memorable, and I don't know, I don't want to do that. But
well, I mean, that reminds me of a conversation I had with Mike York from Pianos Become the Teeth, and we had played a handful of shows together sometime this past year, or maybe it was actually God, was it fall 2022? Yeah, I think it was that long ago. Anyways, we just had this conversation talking about how, there's something to be said for bands who capture a feeling through. We were talking about younger bands, or maybe when we were even younger and we were writing songs, and they were less motivated by the composition or the craft of songwriting, but more so about capturing a feeling and almost letting it be just kind of like this linear story through part after part through, just playing multiple parts within a song and not even, or very rarely even returning to something to kind of cinch it up, And I mean, even back then, I didn't know the difference between a chorus and a verse, or a pre-chorus or post-chorus or bridge. I didn't know any of that shit. And
Right.
I think over the years, you kind of just develop that awareness. And, I think just from my personal experience in music, and also playing in other bands, I don't know. I think I just picked up a thing or two that I felt could benefit our music through being more mindful of the compositions themselves, And I mean, I'm sure there's some musicians out there who are just like, well, yeah, like verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, outro. It's like, that's like one of the simplest song structures, from like a pop sensibility. But with hardcore or punk, you don't want to, it's weird. It's like, you don't want to limit yourself in terms of capturing a feeling or driving an idea within the confines of a traditional song structure, but you have to also recognize why these song structures work for a lot of music out there, and I think we applied that awareness to this record, from song one to the last song, and we found that it just worked. It's like the music still felt interesting to us, and it felt like it was still achieving the thing, in terms of feeling, expression, and all of that visceral nature of this music. But we kind of created outlines for them to live within, and they just seemed to serve the song better than they would if we just kind of, played part after part after part. I mean, sometimes that works. I mean, I listen to older stuff and there's really no like cohesive song structure at all, but it still has a feeling, whether it's the texture of the recording itself, or if it's just, and sorry, I'm kind of skipping around, but to get back to my conversation with Mike, we kind of concluded that there's pros to both,
Yeah.
and there's no like one set way, or there's no like right or wrong in like what's impactful or what's not. So
Yeah, it just all depends on the band. Like I try to write more traditionally because that's what works good for me. But then you have a band like the Callous Dowboys, like they don't follow any kind of typical blueprint a lot of the time, and it's magnificent.
yeah, and I think that's what makes a band like that so uniquely them. It's like they're following their own rules, but that's just the thing. Like they're creating their own rules. They're not trying to work within a framework that already exists. They're kind of pushing the envelope in both genre and songwriting. So yeah, totally. That's a great example.
The track AAEEAA. Now this sounds like a song that started with you and Jeff, and then guitar was placed on top of that. Am I correct?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, that song, of all the songs, that song was actually kind of written on the fly in the rehearsal space. That was a song that I didn't do on my own at home. We basically were just at a rehearsal, and we were kind of coming to the end of wrapping up our cluster of songs that we wanted to kind of pick from. And we sort of just started writing. And I think I came up with that pattern because there was a drummer back in the day from Connecticut. He was in a band called Josta 14. His name was Todd Zulu, and he's a little bit older than me. And Josta 14 were kind of the hometown heroes of New Haven, Connecticut. And Josta 14 was started by Jamie Josta from Hatebreed. So he was the singer of Josta 14 at the time.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so Todd Zulu, he unfortunately passed away. He was in a car accident a few years ago. But as a young drummer, and going to local hardcore shows in Connecticut, I just loved watching him play. And that song is inspired by a drum pattern that he always did. It was kind of a signature drum pattern that I really gravitated towards, that he used to play, within Just a 14. And I basically, I took that pattern and I just kind of just drove it into the ground with the repetitive nature of this song. And it's kind of a nod to him and an appreciation for him having an influence on me and how I play as a drummer. So, it's really sad that he's no longer around. He died when, he was only in his mid 40s, I believe, and he was up in Massachusetts, and I think he was in a band, and I think he was teaching drums, and I hadn't spoken to him for years, but then I later found out that happened. And I don't know. I think about my past a lot in terms of how formative this, this community, this scene, punk, hardcore, it's like, here I am, I'm 44 years old, and we're all a little older than we were 20, 25 years ago. And here we are still talking about it and expressing appreciation for this thing that we're a part of. And that song, though written on the fly in the rehearsal space, I couldn't help but kind of use him as inspiration to basically lay it out. And so that's kind of a nod to him.
That's so fascinating. I would have never guessed if you would have said guess the band who inspired that song, I don't think I would have ever guessed Just a 14. So that's why the songwriting process is just so incredible. And that's why you got to do the try to write a song in the studio thing, because AAEEAA is my favorite on the record. You guys wrote it on the fly, and great things always come out of that. I mean, Limp Bizkit, Nookie, another song written on the fly in the studio.
Are you saying that AAEEAA is our Nookie?
It's akin to Nookie. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
I can get behind that.
I've got like a 2-part question.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know how the interludes came into play. And I think that the 2 interludes that are on the album are so necessary. And I really think it is sort of what ties this album together, because there's so much harshness in these songs, not just, from the loudness and the feedback, but harshness in the content of the lyrics. And the 2 interludes give the listener this really necessary break, and it gives the ears a break. And then when the songs come back in, they're only that much more powerful. So I'm curious how those came about. And the second part of the question is, did this album turn into a concept album for you? And if so, what was the concept?
Those are really good questions. And I'll start with the segues. It wasn't a thing where we were like, okay, we're now going to write our segue. It came after the fact, when we had, 10, 15 songs that we were listening to over and over and over again. And in the process of writing all these songs, there are a lot of times in the rehearsal space where I would just be sitting behind my drum set with the guitar plugged into an amp. Sean would have his guitar, Jeff would have his bass. And sometimes we would just workshop ideas or just play. We would just play a repetitive part. And it's almost like, even though it's repetitive, there was a feeling, at least on my end, I felt like we were all kind of just like thinking about, I don't know, man. Like those parts for me personally are moments of pause, but also moments of reflection, moments to just kind of let your mind wander and just kind of let the mechanics of playing just sort of take you wherever, and one of those segues, the segue, I believe it's Off in Oceans. I think that's what Jeff titled it. The segue prefacing the last Water Pearl, it's called Off in Oceans, and that's just a guitar part being played over and over again. And that was the 3 of us playing together in the rehearsal space. We didn't even record that in the studio. That was an iPhone capture of us just playing at rehearsal. And when we were going through the demos, we keep everything on a G drive or on Google Drive. And one day Jeff, he texted us the file and he's like, "What is this?" And I played it and I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I remember we did that." But the thing is, Sean, he ended up taking that file. He didn't even tell us that he had like kind of like worked on it a little bit, but he's the one who sort of added that wash of reverb at the end. So he kind of just took it upon himself to just, I don't know, he just did that, but he didn't tell us, and he put it back on the drive. So when we listened back to it, it didn't sound like the way we had recorded it, and we thought that particular loop just kind of captured a moment in the process of us making this thing. And it was one of many moments in the rehearsal space, just playing guitar together, you know? So that was for that segue. But the other one was a piece that I had written at home, just like, you know, on the piano part. And, you know, I had originally, the working title for that track was actually titled For River. And if we're okay with revealing this, I had written that inspired by you, Casey. And I'm getting like choked up thinking about it. But you know, the year that you've had with your son, I thought about writing a piece for him. So that segues for you and your son.
Did you know that, Casey?
I did. We had talked about this, I think, right before I heard the album for the first time.
Yeah, I think I had sent that to you before you heard anything else. I think. I don't know. I can't remember.
Actually, I didn't hear anything until I heard the full album. And I was telling Keith earlier, you know, when the album was finished and you sent it over, you had asked me to listen to it from start to finish, you know, without distraction. And I had taken my car for a drive and I sat down and I listened to that from, you know, the whole thing through for the first time. And that song and, you know, the part where Jeff comes in and he starts screaming, "I've got to get away. I've got to get away." And it struck this chord inside of me. And I just like opened up and started crying. Like I haven't cried ever in my life before. And it just had this like power over me that I haven't had with music in a really long time. And for me, that was like the thing that made this album so special was, you know, not only knowing that there was some part of it that related to what I was going through, but that it opened up this feeling inside of me to just kind of feel like I could let go.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. I think that was the whole thing was, you know, I think there was such a concentrated energy around making this thing. And you know, Casey, you were alongside us the whole process. And, you know, we were so excited to kind of keep you updated on what we were doing and, you know, just to kind of let you know where we were at and all that. And, you know, and beyond that communication regarding like recording songs or whatever, you know, we had just been talking throughout the year whenever you had time, because obviously you were managing a lot and still are. But in that year, this past year, or almost 2 years ago, year and a half to 2 years, like, you know, the amount of stuff that you had on your plate, yet you still made time. You still made time to get on the phone with us just to check in, and not even to really talk music or you know, record stuff, but more so just to chat. And you know, of course, your transparency and what you were going through and all that. I don't think there was any way that couldn't have affected our headspace and just our awareness of, you know, what you were going through. And yeah, I think it kind of seeped into my creative process in that moment. And I think when I was sitting at home and I was just kind of playing that part and working out the feel of it, it just made me think of the circumstance, and that's how it kind of came to be. So, but the record as a whole is definitely of that theme. I think it wasn't like it was set out to become this theme, but this was a capturing of a very particular moment, I think. And I think writing this music during the pandemic, during a time where there was a lot of unknowns, um, the world was changing by the day, and it couldn't have not influenced what we captured. And I think in the end, when we went into the studio to record it all, there was such a concentrated focus and drive, and like we were just on a mission, and we recorded all of this pretty quickly. I think we tracked everything in almost 2 days. We had done the vocals at our rehearsal space, actually. It was just me and Jeff in the rehearsal space, late nights when no one else was around. So we just recorded those beforehand, or afterwards, rather. And then Jack flew them in and then started mixing it. But I mean, our world was basically the rehearsal space.
Yeah.
I mean, I was writing at home and all that, but it was still like nothing really came to life or got lit up until the three of us got in that room and just started gelling it all together. And then, once we did it officially at Jack's, then it really just became this other thing. And while this was all happening, I was personally thinking, like, this is incredible. It's like we have the three of us as the band. We have Jack on deck to help us see this thing through. I mean, that was an amazing experience in itself. Just working with Jack has just always been such a great experience. Knowing that you, Casey, were sort of on the sidelines from afar, on the East Coast, just knowing that you knew what was going on and what we were doing, and it really felt like something was taking place, and this was all before we kicked off tour this past summer. It's just fucking wild that we like already had like a whole year of this insane collaboration and planning and just setting it all up. And this is all before we even played a show by the time the record came out in May.
How did it feel to finally like play these live and see the reaction and the people, that came out to experience these songs with you for the first time?
I mean, it was overwhelming. We couldn't have imagined what this thing eventually became, and honestly, I feel is still becoming. I feel like the thing has not stopped, and I don't think we've ever really experienced this before as a band. In terms of actually seeing it in real time, people continuing to gravitate towards these songs, or people that have never heard of us and suddenly are gravitating towards this record, or coming to a show and seeing us for the first time. It's been a really new experience for us. But when the record came out May 5th, we really hit the ground running, because on May 6th we were already in Chicago. We were playing ZBR Fest. We had played Audio Tree that weekend. We played a studio session at Chicago Music Exchange. So like right out the gates, it just felt like we were just like pedal to the metal. And then once we started playing more shows across the country, like when we actually started touring, I still can't believe the kind of reactions that we've been getting every night. It's not just like, a one-off crazy show. It's like every single show we played this year, it's almost like people feel like they have permission to just let loose with us. and it's not like in a crowd killing type of way. It's like a catharsis, and this is what I think we can only hope for people to feel safe to just fucking let loose and just kind of exhaust whatever is within them, in a safe space where people feel supported. And that's kind of what I've personally always wanted to see in like punk rock, for myself. And I think that it seems like our shows they've kind of become that for people over this year, more so than any other tour or time in the band's existence. Like, this is completely different territory for us this year. And this same thing happened in Europe. I mean, I couldn't believe it that even in Europe, they felt like the shows in the US, and we hadn't really scratched the surface in Europe. I mean, we went over there, I think once, like before the pandemic, but that was it. And this was a whole other thing. So.
Yeah, I was talking about it in the beginning of the show, but when I saw you in New York City, there was a lot of young people there, which I wasn't expecting, and everybody was going off. It was so great, and not in a crowd-killing way, like you're saying, just thrashing about and just letting it all out, which was so great to witness.
Yeah, that show was, the concentrated energy that we were able to, that we've been able to kind of experience with people coming to the shows. That one stood out because, for one, it's New York, but two, it was a sold out show, and it was almost 300 people, and everyone was just there to, I don't know, to have a good time and to let loose. And I think that's what's been happening, every time we've been playing. And again, it's like, when you're a younger band, and I'm just speaking for myself, it's like, whenever we played shows when we were kids, all we could hope for, all we were hoping for was like, oh, if people move, that means they like us, but now it's like a thing where I can't even look at the crowd when I'm playing because I just get distracted and overwhelmed. So I just kind of like stay in my bubble because I really, like, I can enjoy the energy, but if I look at it, I just I get distracted.
Yeah. When Jeff was on the show, he mentioned that Nick, the original guitar player, Nick Antonopoulos, he just disappeared. You guys didn't hear from him again. Has anyone heard from him? Do you know what's going on?
No, we haven't heard from Nick. And
nothing, no text, no email, just zilch,
like absolute radio silence. And we tried reaching out to him several times at the time of when we were going to record the record. So originally we had every intention to include Nick on this record, even if he wasn't going to be able to record on every song. In the beginning of the songwriting process, we were actually sending him demos. Every time we rehearsed and we came away with iPhone demos, we would excitedly text him or email him and just be like, check this out. And, we even went so far as Sean went so far as to like record him playing guitar to like show Nick the parts, because we really just wanted to have him do whatever he could just to have involvement. Now, mind you, we're in SF, he's still in Connecticut, so like logistically there was a strain. But I also think, because Nick isn't the best communicator, I think I'm just presuming that I think it just became a bit too much for him with the idea of just knowing that we were going so full throttle and he wasn't here. But we had every intention to get him out here during the recording. I mean, we had bought him a plane ticket, honestly, and then he kind of backed out, and we haven't heard from him since. So I was really kind of like hurt at first, just as I'm sure he was hurt and maybe is still hurt. But I was feeling kind of just like, well, I don't know what more we could have done. But I think it was just a point in the band's existence where that kind of transitional period of just, the three of us being in the Bay Area and then Nick just still being in Connecticut, it was almost like an inevitable thing,
Right.
But I just wish that there was better communication, and we kind of. I mean, Nick is still our brother. We've shared something with him that it's like you can't touch what we've done together. As a band in like the earlier iterations of JD and all that, but I think after a while we just kind of had acceptance of it and have always spoken favorably of him. We don't carry any kind of bad blood towards him. We know he's Nick. He's our really dear old friend, and I know that these things happen with bands all the time, but it was kind of a shock when he said he wasn't coming to the recording sessions. I kind of just knew that he was tapping out.
Yeah.
That was the communication, like him just saying, on second thought, I don't think I'm going to come out. And we were kind of
Wow.
like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we didn't let anything derail us. We were so fucking focused. So, and honestly, like, obviously it's hard because he wasn't involved in any of the songwriting and he wasn't on any of the demos, and this thing really just became its own thing. It's a new chapter in the band's existence. So, and it just doesn't include him. And but that doesn't mean that he's not a part of the timeline. It doesn't mean that he's not a huge part of the band's history. Like I would never play that down or neglect to recognize that. So regardless of us being in communication with him or not, it's like, still fucking love the dude. I mean, we shared an experience together as young kids, like just that you don't have with anyone. So
Right. And that this is just a new part of the timeline, but the memories with Nick remain forever.
yeah, and you can't expect things to remain the same. Things are constantly changing. We're constantly evolving. Life just it doesn't remain the same. I mean, it's not the same today as it was 6 months ago, and sometimes, as we all know, including your listeners, like in life, things come at you and it changes the trajectory. Like you can never really predict where things are going to be in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Like things just happen.
Exactly. First time you and Jeff were on the show, I was still the Northeast scene and I had a co-host. Now you're back and it's the new scene and it's just me.
That's
well,
right.
and Casey this time.
This is true. And by the way, congratulations to you. I mean, congratulations to you both. But Keith, I really commend your commitment and consistency and just the execution of this podcast. You've done such an amazing job, and I just can't get over how many incredible guests you've had on your podcast. And I just wanted to give you props because you're doing amazing work. And I really appreciate how you're doing it and your commitment to it. And you're so good at it. So I can't wait to see how you continue to drive this thing, next year or into the new year, rather.
Well, thank you for saying that, and thank you for all the public praise as well. I went and watched you giving props on Audio Tree a bunch of times, and I think you were on another podcast too and mentioned me, so I appreciate that, especially coming from you, who has written my favorite record of 2023, and it's not only just my favorite record, but it's like an inspiration to me too, because I'm putting together a new band that's kind of in your world of music, and I just pull a lot of inspiration from the record as well, so I thank you for that.
Erik, I think that, Keith and I were talking earlier, we didn't discuss what our top album was going to be for this year. And it just happened to coincidentally both be Jeromes Dream. And I had said to him that, even if this record did not come out on Iodine, it 100% would still hold that top spot because you guys really created something beautiful and special that sort of transcends, just a moment in time. And, you guys deserve all the accolades and praise that you're getting right now. So, congratulations and thank you for everything that you've done.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. Just everything, everything that we've done together collectively. And it means a lot to me that you guys even invited me to do this with you and to recognize the record we did. I can't believe both of you picked our record, but it means a lot to me. Obviously, it means a lot to Jeff and Sean too. And yeah, it's an interesting feeling right now, because all I've got in my mind now is kind of like, where do we go from here, and how can we double down on this thing that we did that kind of, I don't know, it brought us a lot of I was going to say it brought us a lot of peace in certain ways, which is, I know it's ironic because the music itself is really heavy and noisy, but there's something about reflecting on all of the time spent on this thing and all of the people that were a part of making this thing happen. Because, it wasn't just single-handedly the band and the recording. I mean, to get it out there in front of people and to share it with everyone, it really takes a concerted effort. And I don't know, I'm just grateful to be in this circle of people who are doing really cool things and who have an approach and a mindset, kind of what you touched on earlier, Casey, about why we even do this to begin with. And it's not to get house money. It's because it's what we feel like we have to do from a creative standpoint. And, if we could do it well enough where people like it enough to buy a record or a t-shirt or, a ticket to a show, and for all of us to kind of just like share this collective experience of music and camaraderie and community, that's where it gets really good. And that's kind of what I really noticed or observed this year. Everything from before the record came out to now, and hopefully into next year and beyond. I'm just so fucking grateful that we are still able to do this. Yeah, I appreciate you both for being able to reflect on it a little bit. It's wild that it's the end of 2023 and, there's still a lot more to do.
Oh, yeah. It's been a hell of a year, and there's more to come. Speaking of, Jeromes Dream has East Coast tour dates in February, so make sure you go to those. And please make sure you listen to Erik's podcast, Microspy. Right, Erik?
That's right. In fact, I think after this episode, I'm inspired to edit my last episode of the year, which is with Dee Dee from MS Paint. So look out for that before the end of the year. Dee Dee was such a pleasure to talk to, and we played with them at the fest in Florida, and we just kind of, our bands just kind of gravitated towards each other, and we did the podcast like the following week. So yeah, what a great band! What a great guy he was to talk to and get to know a little bit. So but yeah, thank you both for all of this. I really appreciate it.
Erik, before you go, we have to take a quick second to appreciate how insane that backyard show was at the fest in Florida.
Yes, that was one of my favorite shows we played, and yeah,
was how did 2 in the morning when you guys finally went on?
Well, yeah, so the fest set was at 10 p.m. and then we basically, it was just a few blocks away from the venue we played. And then, yeah, well, here's the thing. At the fest, we shared this amazing bill. Seisha played, MS Paint, Gel, Paint It Black, Capsule, and like, and like, Jillian Carter and just a bunch of other bands. So if that wasn't enough, this after party that was going on close to James from Bane and Loma Prietta's record shop, Sunshine Records in Gainesville, it was like a generator show or something, and it was 2 a.m. And not only did JD play and Gel play, but fucking Asshole Parade played. So there was that, and I couldn't think of a better show to wrap the year with. And I'm still kind of reeling from that whole weekend. It was and then with Walter from Quicksand playing his acoustic set, Jeff Rickley playing his. It's like it was such a great weekend. And then Casey, we got to hang for a little bit, which was so nice, and all the other Iodine cats, and what a surreal way to kind of tie up 2023, the weekend in Gainesville. I think that set's on YouTube, actually. I think if you just look up, I don't know, like Jerome's Dream or Gel parking lot show Gainesville, I think that comes up on YouTube.
I wish I could have been there. I almost was. I played a fest pre-show, but not the actual show. But Erik, we will meet out on the road together soon enough, I hope.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I think it'll probably be February. Hopefully, if you're in town, we'll see you at St. Vitus.
I already got my ticket.
Oh my God, I would have listed you. Jesus.
Well, I have to give back, but you can list me and maybe I'll find someone to bring or something. We'll talk.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, guys, thank you. We're out of time. We thank you, all of you who joined us for this Christmas Day spectacular show, right? This is the show that keeps giving, even on Christmas Day. I'm back next week with another blockbuster episode. So thanks everybody for listening. Happy New Year, and see you in 2024.